One of the questions I always ask when I show people around here is that sense of whose story are we agreeing to agree with and why? And what are the priorities of that story? And are the priorities my priorities, or are they that storyline I've adopted as real? And oftentimes I say, when we're being realistic, we can interchange that word oftentimes with the word fearful. Because priorities have to do with a realization that essentially the world, in all its madness, all its chaos, is always churning, always in conflict, always at odds. But maybe that's the point of this other alchemy, this other sense for the imagination, for who and what we are. It says time, and this is one of the things I learned early on, was I began to understand that time is not fixed. Time is essentially a key, and that it wasn't a matter of time, but always a matter of task. I learned this from artists and writers that did more with a quill pen and a brush than many do with computers and all sorts of technology. And I wondered why, and I realized that it was about task. It was about the obligation to the questions involved. And that's why we are at a point as human beings where it is not a matter of for or against, but almost this last question, as I look at it, that is, well, what is the relevance of myself in this? Where does my me matter? It doesn't seem to matter in the world. If I shout at the world, it's like shouting at a television. It doesn't change, it just is. So what is it that I could do? And this is where, and I now realize that my life was a pattern, not a conceit about this, but I realized that one of the reasons why my home became a place of community and of gathering and discussion groups was I began to recognize many, many years ago that if I had opportunity, which I was given, I was blessed with a home, to begin bringing those that shared curiosity, a sense of wonder, a sense of possibility, into an agreement that said, at least here, let these things matter. Let them matter between us, at least. And that's why I realized that I've cultivated a library and discussion groups and fascinating friends that really do reflect what I would say is the garden of the curious. And oftentimes the great key to that curiosity is to develop a sense of priority that realizes that as much as one would love to be a famous artist or writer and have all the accolades and all the stories written about them, that usually that's not the case. And the case becomes, well, if that's not the case, then what is it? And that's about the priority of one's relationship with the creative spirit. And because the world is passing by so quickly and so full of distraction and noise, that maybe, and this is what I find to be true, that the art of who and what we are is a willingness to finally step back and say, like a gardener would say, I choose to plant these things here. That's what happened with the art here. I didn't choose to do it for my neighbor. I didn't choose to do it for a religion or institution. I did it because it was a priority I had to give myself. Is there a way I can live with this human journey and not devote myself to fear or a sense of an ever-darkening plain? And that's what brought me back full circle to the sense that we are storytellers. But I think we've done such a good job of taking ourselves out of the picture. A lot of this work is that we've been taught to be adjacent. You are not important. Your pain is not important. Someone else is more important. And in this story, you get either punished or forgotten, or you disappear. And that's where I started to understand, whose story is this? Why do we agree to agree with that if it makes us unhappy, if it makes us fearful, if it makes us, even worse, feel meaningless? But maybe that's what the elders teach, that's what the storytellers teach, that's what the library teaches. Well, put it together in a narrative that honors the fact that nobody brings it to you. Nobody does it for you. But you can begin, like the captain of a ship that's on the water, to realize the storm is not on board with you, but you must navigate it. What is on the water is not on board with you, but you must navigate it. But if something is on board with you, you must deal with it. And that's the question of prioritization, meaning understanding where we are in the context to our greater journey. And so I would suggest, at least from my understanding, that the more we can return, and I use the metaphor of home, but I really mean the metaphor of the heart, the more to the story of what is it that I love? What is it that allows me in all the darkness of the world to still say, yes, this matters? To allow myself to cherish that which I cannot see and yet I sense, like when I look at a beautiful sunset. There is a magnificence beyond anything I will ever grasp, and that frees me. So maybe these are the stories. These are the qualities that finally bring us back and say, your priorities really is about who and what you think you are, and where you live, what you love, and that only you can change what you're agreeing with. And if you don't like what you're agreeing with, you don't have to reject it, because oftentimes you have to work for it. But you can put it in context and say, when I close my door, when I come here, when I say, this is where I live, then I will, from this center, begin to tell a story that says, if I begin from this center, I'm not lost in the outer turning of the world, but I'm actually like that sea captain navigating a ship through the darkest storm of all. Priorities.